We've got some.
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit. And today, we're bringing them to you so you can take action immediately and start creating real content momentum.
If you'd like to learn more about how to turn your content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh, yeah. Sweet. 2v2 time. Today's guests are an epic couple. We met them through one of the masterminds we're part of, and soon after, we started working together. Often get asked, how do you work together? Well, we have the same questions and many more for today's guests. Did you imagine working with your wife?
No.
That's right, because you don't have a wife.
I want to read that. I want to read that part correctly. It says, "Do you imagine me working with my wife?" Him. He has a wife.
The only reason I don't say that is because she's now listening to this episode, man.
I know. That's why that's why I put it in the intro.
All right.
After that, it says, "Whoa, I got the chills," right? But I wanted to get him in trouble. But guys, since I'm single, I don't have that problem. That being said, today's guests help couples with their communication and ultimately a better relationship. I'm just going to put this in this way. I'm not even married, and I'm sold just by watching their content.
Absolutely. Also, they're not foreign to the power of content. One of them, you'll have to guess who, has worked over 18 years for Sirius XM and a host of their hard rock channels.
Insert epic guitar solo.
Right. Some of the accomplishments include organize a sold-out concert in Times Square, hosted live events with 30,000 people, and build a six-figure business in health and fitness.
That is all super impressive, guys.
Woo,
I am
baby.
so excited. Please welcome the power couple, host of the One Relationship Show. I put here, soon to be launched, but actually they just launched it, right?
Yes.
Let's go. Kate and Tanner.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm glad I commented right at the I love the Minions part, right? And I didn't realize you unmuted us.
Absolutely. I gave you a warning. I'm like, hey, you guys are actually going to be there. It's just like behind the camera, but we can still hear you. So, we encourage that. We encourage people to laugh and be with us. It's okay. It's okay.
You just made it like 10 times better with that.
I know. I totally sold it. We're a client, and I love how you communicate.
The Minions are such a good visual for what you do. It's like a perfect example.
Thank you.
Do like an animation or something.
Like we've been testing this message from the last episodes, and we actually had somebody else say too, like, I have a kid and they love the Minions. I think it's a great representation. So, I think that's going to be the hook we're going to use in our funnel. Yeah.
You guys got it. You got it.
Let me tell you how excited I am. I'm like, I can't believe we haven't have these guys on yet. So welcome to episode 85. I can't wait to dive in because you are doing such like wonderful things. And we're very fortunate to have you guys part of our adventure as well. So why don't you guys go ahead and tell us a little bit, who you guys are, who's Tanner, who's Kate? I'm guessing that the woman is Kate. Just saying.
You never know these days, right?
We don't know. But like, how do you guys like get into this thing together? And you guys are creating such a massive impact. I'm curious. How did everything start?
Me? Okay. So, this is actually one of my favorite stories to say or to tell because we both were in such different places in our lives when we met. Tanner was coming out of a divorce, a single dad, living in Colorado. I was in New York City, single professional, working in radio, living the rock star kind of life. And I was looking for a relationship and looking for marriage and building a family. Tanner was not coming out of a divorce, but we both were very, very passionate about growing and wanting to develop ourselves and knowing the past that we had. We didn't want to repeat that. So we were definitely each individually at that space. And we met at a what we kind of call like a personal development type seminar. It was out in La Jolla, California. Bo Eason, our mentor, we love him. He's amazing. He and his wife, Dawn, do tremendous work. And we were at this 3-day weekend event where we just started doing work. We started figuring out the power of our story and seeing how that can build and create connection with people. And that was how we met when we came out of that 3-day weekend and said, okay, we're going to work with a year mastermind with Bo and his team. And that was sort of just the start. We realized that we were sort of in the same industry, and we said, hey, let's be accountability partners. And in your proposal too, you're like, we went from accountability partners to accountability partners plus. Like, it just
this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing Tanner's smile as you tell the story. I think it's all part of his plan.
The whole strategy.
All right.
Yeah. No, and like Kate said, and what's interesting, I think something that's been on my mind a lot is proximity is power, right? You guys mentioned that we met as part of a mastermind. Kate and I met because it wasn't the 3-day event. We were at this 3-day event. We went through the entire event. I guess we saw each other because there were only like 100 and some people.
Yeah.
It wasn't until we were actually at this after party event for the people that had committed to working for a year in a mastermind. And, we were, as Kate said, I wasn't divorced. She had come out of a long-term relationship, and we were really focused on ourselves and like figuring out who we are and what we wanted to do. And quite frankly, sort of this next phase of our career, I told you guys in the behind the scenes, like, I'm an introverted, awkward IT guy that got life turned upside down on me, in my late 20s, thankfully, through divorce and a lot of pain and challenges that caused me to really take a look at, like, what do I want to do with my life? What do I stand for? And it's led me down this whole journey. And we were hawking health and fitness products. We were in network marketing, and that's how we got started together. And it's really evolved into this whole other business that we're doing now.
Wow, that's amazing. Kate, anything? I know we interrupted you there halfway through the story. I'm sorry.
And I think it's just important to recognize that, as we were looking to develop ourselves, which I don't think most people don't really want to do that. Most people don't really want to do the work and say, why is my life, and I was there for many years. I had a really great life, actually, but I couldn't understand why I wasn't finding the right guy. I couldn't understand why, things weren't working out for me. And I had all this debt and all that. And finally, and it was actually because I joined this health and fitness company that they encouraged personal development and reading books that, would just help you grow. Because I didn't really know anything about it before that. And quite frankly, I thought of those books as like self-help, like those are for like screwed up people, and I'm like, I'm not screwed up. And quite frankly, like, we can all improve. Everyone can improve in some area. We don't have to be sick to get better. You don't have to be broken to be fixed, sort of thing. It's just, we can all improve in some way. And I recognized that I needed to improve. And so I read this book called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And it was actually both of our first personal development book that we each read before we knew each other. And I read that book, and I can't tell you how many times out loud I'm like, oh, so that's why it's happening. Oh, that makes so much more sense why I'm not getting this. And I really had to start making changes. And if you want something different in your life, you have to start doing something different. And that's what I did. I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. I didn't know how the journey was going to go. I didn't know what to, expect. Just that I had to do something differently because I didn't like where my life was leading.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very powerful. If you want to change, you need to do something different. And there's a lot of people that they want change, but they are not willing to change themselves or start doing things differently. Right. And I can totally relate. I feel like I was one of those people that I was like, I want to have these results in business. Yet I was always doing the same. And for me, the same was, going in the habits of pretending that I was working, sitting in the computer and then getting distracted. I was like, why is this not working? I'm spending 8 hours in front of the computer doing things. But yeah, out of those hours, how many am I actually doing something, right? I mean, not even to like personal life, like that's a whole new monster as well, right? I feel like I'm discovering that side of me lately.
I know.
For those single ladies listening, I broke up a few months back, so I'm doing my inner work so I can be ready.
Please reach out.
Shout out, right? What a plug! You guys said in the intro,
I know.
Just throwing that out there.
Wow, Fonzie. He's blushing right now. You can't tell, but he's really blushing.
If you want your content minions or a date with Fonzie, hit the DMs.
Hashtag Fonzie right there in the comments.
Hashtag Fonzie.
I think like your story is so powerful too, because sometimes we go through life, right? Like with these like group of people, right? And we're used to hang out with that group of people and thinking like that group of people, right? It happened to me, right? And I was like really, really scared when it got time to level up, because I was like, wow, I don't really know what to expect. Should I still have this group of people, right? And it's just like sometimes it's necessary. Nothing against personally with that group of people. They're still my friends. But if I need to level up, I need to operate at a different level, right? That they might not be in because they don't really want to be in that place, which is okay. But I do. Wow, what is my next step? And for us also, it changed everything with environment, right? We had to put ourselves in an environment where we were challenged, where we were guided, where we were like, hey, this is exactly what you guys need to do to get to the next level, which also included you guys figure it out, right? It's like, hey, go actually execute, figure it out, like go execute again, fail, or how we call it now. Is it samples? What was it?
Yeah, samples.
Samples, not failing. It's just a sample, right? Just
love it.
That's good.
And move along, right? So it's so amazing to see you guys meeting in this kind of environment. You're like, okay, let's be accountability partners, and now let's build something awesome together.
Yeah, accountability partners plus.
Now I gotta ask, because we get this question every single time we're on an interview. It's like, how can you guys work together? Like, obviously we're brothers, right? But you guys are a couple now, and you guys, have a beautiful family together. I'm like, how do you guys do it? I can definitely, I cannot do this with my wife. We've actually had this conversation like 2 days ago. The funny part is that she did not get offended. She's like, absolutely no, I cannot work with you. How do you guys do it together?
Some couples can't.
Yeah,
it's a good question, and quite frankly, launching this podcast has really tested that. I think the reality is, not every day is a great, glorious day, and I think we do our best to be as transparent as possible. But I think to answer that question and to sort of tie it in with what we're seeing with a lot of the clients we're coaching from a relationship perspective, is it's about having a long-term vision, and it's about having common things in mind of where we're going, and that to me, I think takes some of the, for lack of a better term, sting off of the day-to-day disagreements. And so we know, like, we didn't 5 years ago, 6 years ago when we met, it's not like we're like, oh, this is what we're going to do, and we're launch a podcast and we're going to help couples. We were just like, hey, we want something different for ourselves. We were so impacted by taking control of our own health and fitness, by starting an online business on our own where we were in control of our money and not somebody else. We both worked, very good paying corporate jobs. And there was such an empowerment in doing something on our own and taking the next step and the next step. And so we've been, challenged, just like you guys mentioned, right? We've been challenged by a few of our mentors in particular to have that long-term vision. Our mentor, Bo Eason, where we met, he talks about having a 20-year plan for your life. And we've sort of condensed that down to 10 years, because I think that for a lot of people, it's hard to think about 20 years in the future.
Sometimes it's hard for even 5 years for some people. But
it is. But I also would say, hey, we can all think back to 2010, right? Like, I bet everybody remembers something about 2010. And so just that easily, you can think forward to 2030. And so we adopt that mindset, and we're like, okay, we know where we're going. We know where we're focused. And we've had to learn about our strengths and the things that we're not so good at. And we are very different people, which oftentimes works out really well. Sometimes it doesn't.
Not so much.
But we keep the end in mind. We keep the future in mind, and I think we communicate well.
And I was going to say that, just to add to it, that we remember that we love each other and that our goal really is the focus. Like, we love each other and we are working towards the same thing. So, with Tanner talking about vision, like, we have the vision, we're working towards the same thing. We know where we're going, and that we came into this marriage because we love each other. We are not going in with past to make the past mistakes. We're here to change that and move forward, learn from what has happened, and just move forward. So remembering, and this again, with some of the people we're coaching, you have to remember why you married the person in the first place, especially when it's so many years down the line and you're like just stuck in this triage of the day, like the kids and this, and then you didn't do this and she did that and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah, you're fixing the one little issue for that moment that has this whole underneath to it because you haven't addressed stuff for so long. So it's like, let's handle things on a day-to-day basis, work through it. Remember, we love each other, and say, okay, let's keep ourselves focused on the future.
I'm going to add one more thing. And that is, it's personal to me, is that I grew up in a family. My mom and dad ran a business together for 25 years. I never really saw them argue a lot. I did see them argue, though. I did see them have disagreements, both about business and family. And unfortunately, when they sold the business, they got a divorce within a year. And so in my mind, I came from a blueprint where I thought like, you don't want to own a business with your spouse, because I saw what happened to my parents, and I saw like when the business sold, the marriage dissolved and all these things. And so I would also just say for myself personally, it's been somewhat of a challenge in a way of like something to overcome, a stereotype to overcome, that their marriage had nothing to do with business ownership or business sales or any of that other stuff. I've been able to separate that. But I think for people that, again, may have, preconceived notions, whether it's from a family business or whatever, your past and your family's past does not have to define whatever you want for the future.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Wow. Kate, you said, I love what you said about reminding yourself and each of you that you love each other, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like, because sometimes we just let problems, like little things, escalate, get in the way, right? And then we lose that focus that you were talking about, that vision. And that is so important. I feel like, I think my brother and I, we do a pretty good job at that, at like coming together and, punching each other, be like, I love you, bro.
That's why we have glasses today,
provide. But we I feel like we do a pretty good job, but we have definitely noticed in some other people that they let their problems escalate a little bit more, right? And and I think it's that lack of communication, right? I mean, what you said in the form that you said, you guys help couples communicate better, right? So they can have a better relationship. And it's just fundamental. Like the more I spend in the business, like trying to grow the business, the more I realize the value of effective communication.
Absolutely.
Like it has grown so much on the last 5 years that we started our first business to what it is today. And I think it is key for everything, right? And then, Tanner, sorry, I know you want to say something.
Let me say it.
Yeah, wait your time.
Communication. Right?
We go through the same thing.
Those are the challenges of running a podcast with a co-host, guys.
It's all good.
So, Tanner, you also mentioned, those beliefs, and those are so important because sometimes we just let those old beliefs dictate pretty much the rest of our life. So, something that I've been facing lately in the last year, I would say, is kind of like looking back and say, what are my beliefs that were instilled in me through experiences, or what other people might have said of me in the past, and how is that affecting me today, and how can I change it and turn it into new beliefs? So that's definitely an interesting look, right, that someone has to do inside. And it's not easy. It's not easy to go back and accept certain things like, wow, like I used to do this all the way because of X, Y, and Z. And now I need to change that. And change, again, comes by what we said at the beginning, started doing things differently. Right. So it just like escalates, and it's an interesting process. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to pick your hard.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yesterday, like this is very fresh, right? Like as in we're recording now, this is Monday. yesterday, Sunday, we're involving this amazing charity that I think we overshot the things that we wanted to do, right? And then I get pretty angry every time I'm not in movement, that I'm not like moving forward on momentum, right? So weekends tend to be really challenging for me, even though I'm spending time with my family, but I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not moving forward on the business or the things that we got to do to keep this thing rolling, right? So then I get pretty angry, and you cannot, it's like hangry, but a different level. So yesterday, right, Fonzie goes, I'm like, hey, I'm going to be in this coffee shop doing some work. And I didn't even want to like think about it because I was so frustrated that we were not executing what we said that we were going to execute. So I'm like, okay, let me go meet him over there. So I went to the coffee shop and I sat and started working, and he goes like, are you okay?
I could feel the energy bubble around him. I was like, oh.
And this is a perfect example because before, I don't think I would have said anything. I would have just like stay quiet and just like do my own stuff, and then more angry because he was not executing on things that I was thinking, which is insane to think about. But then I was like, look, dude, I am overwhelmed. Right. I just got to sit down, take a deep breath. I'm overwhelmed with the amount of things that we got to do. Right. We're onboarding new team members. We're having all these processes that we're designing. And on top of that, we have this charity, amazing thing. But I don't know why we said yes to this thing, because it's like, oh, so much. Right. And then he's like, dude, don't worry. I got you. Like, go home. Like, go see your kid. I got this. And he got it. And it's incredible how just like one little phrase like that, they're like, just like open up, be like, hey, I need help. And it's so important. And yesterday was a perfect example of that. So thank you, Fonzie.
You're very welcome.
And thank you guys for bringing that topic, because bringing it into the business side of things or content or any kind of team is so important to have that. Now, what is like maybe one element that you see in different either couples that you guys coach or team that you guys work with that prevents them from making that change to a better communication?
I want to start this because I want to just tack on real quick to that last comment. Something that I've had to do for myself mentally, and I think this is important, for high performing individuals like you that are, you're business minded, you've got things going, and so the weekends, or quite frankly, for me, it's even mornings and evenings where it's like, oh, we got and our 2-year-old's waking up like insanely early now, like earlier than she ever has. So the mornings are blown up, just like everything. And it occurred to me, I don't know, this was a few weeks ago now, but I was like, I invest between $3,000 and $5,000 worth of my time every day into my kids. If I value my time the way that my time is worth, and I think about how much time I'm spending, with my kids. And so, somebody may be like, well, that's kind of an effed up way to look at it. Listen, I don't care. If I have to, from a business perspective, I'm thinking about what's not happening in the business when I'm with my kids. I just had to get myself right and be like, yeah, dude, but you're putting in like $20,000 of time investment in your kids every week. So think about what that looks like with the compound effect over time versus if you don't do that and your kids are going to cost you way more in the long run if you don't freaking help your kids in the early stage. So I wanted to address that because I could so relate. And like I said, this was just like a mental thing that I had to come to that I think helps for business owners. I'll let you go first because I think you wanted to say something in terms of.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's good. That's good.
You can take that little nugget and deposit it.
Kate, before I lose my train of thought here, just a comment regarding what Tanner just said. Dude, I remember. So we have an older brother, right? He's from my dad's first marriage, but we grew up together.
He's not Luis.
We love him. His name is not Luis. That's true. And when he had his first child, right? I remember we were at the house. And something happened with the kid, and my dad was like, hey, Mario, his name is Mario. And he's like, let the kid, cry. Don't pamper him right now, because it's better for him to cry now than for you to cry when he's older. And I don't know why. I mean, I'm telling you, at that moment, I was probably like 12, something like that, like 13, 14. And that comment just stuck in my head. And I was like, wow, that is so important. And I related that to life, not only like kids, obviously, because I don't have any
that we know
# single. And and I'm like, wow, like that is so impressive, right? It's keeping that long run, not the not the immediate gratification, but like what is in for the long run if I do this right now. So thank you, Tanner, again. Sorry, Kate.
Yeah. No, and we've learned from our therapists too that with children like that, like for the parents who might be listening and they have small kids, like they have to go through that tantrum, and there's a whole cycle thing to it where you like the more you talk to them and the more you maybe want to try to grab them or maybe console them or like whatever's going on, like you just make it worse and they stay in that cycle of just tantrum. So we've learned that like, I can't understand you right now, but I'm ready to talk to you when you can calm down. And then this way, the kid will just have their tantrum, let them freak out, know that you're there when they're ready. And like, they eventually just will calm down on their own. And then you can address what happened. So I think it's just a really important thing for parents who might be listening that, the tantrums are going to happen. Our children are no exception to that. And there is a way to work through it, and better for them to figure it out now than later. What was the question? What's the problems?
I literally was typing it because I'm like, they're probably gonna ask me back. So here we go. So with the communication thing, right? Like we apply it to business, we told that story of what happened. What is like the number one thing that prevents people or teams to actually go out and take action with that communication, have success with this? What is the one thing that you guys see with everybody that you've been coaching that prevents them from doing that?
I think part of it is not having a supportive spouse and the fear of what that would entail. I also think that they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't know. My life is spinning out of control. I don't even know how to get my head above water at this point to even look at something that could possibly be part of a solution. So, I mean, that's a lot of what I've encountered and some of the women that I've had, more one-on-one conversations with, and they feel so, stuck and just don't know what to do or where to start, especially because many of the situations that we've been dealing with, like this is ongoing now for years. So it's like, where do you start? We're newly married. We're only 3 years into the marriage, and if it was only 3 years of just some chaos, like we could probably figure out how to backpedal it a little bit and get to some resolution. When you're 20 years deep, like what do you do? So it's I mean, those were two things that really just stood out to me. I don't know if there was something else.
Yeah, I've got a couple of different thoughts. Two things: responsibility and expectations.
Yeah.
No,
so it's huge.
When I was going through my divorce, I had many reasons and events that I could point to that my ex-wife was in the driver's seat of for why the marriage didn't work out. And I was confronted with the fact that if I let her be responsible for the reason the marriage doesn't work out, then what am I going to do in the next marriage? And I actually was just making a video about this, that if you put your responsibility outside of yourself, even if you are wronged, and Grant Cardone, I've heard Grant Cardone say this a few times, where he's like, even if you get rear-ended at a stoplight, you can find your responsibility in that, because you could have left at a different time. You could have taken a different route. You could have had your clients come to your office. Like, why are you out driving to other people? Like, there's so many different ways. And so I was challenged with figuring out, how am I responsible for these situations that I felt like happened to me? And the sooner I found that responsibility, the sooner I felt freedom to be like, oh, I was responsible. It's not good or bad. And that leads me to my second point, which is the expectations, is that I think so many people have views in their head of what their life and what their marriage and what their parenting is supposed to look like based on history. And we've heard something that drives us is that any change that you make about your behaviors and sort of the patterns of your family, any change that you can make will have an impact for the next 7 generations.
That's huge.
So if you put that into context, our lives are basically being run by the expectations that were created of our ancestors from a couple hundred years ago. And you think like, oh no, we live in 2020 and we're all smart on our, cell phones and we've got the internet. And it's like, but if you really look at like, okay, why do you believe that? And why? Because we parent very differently. Like kids want to flip out, like Kate was saying, fine, flip out. Kids want to, stick their freaking fingers into a light socket. Fine. They'll find out soon enough that they shouldn't do that. Right. Like,
I mean, everything within safety, the safety of our children are definitely the top priority. However,
I'm not pushing them off the roof of the house, but I'm just saying like we allow our children to have boundaries to where they can get hurt and where they can experience pain. And I see so many parents that are like, don't do
the
that.
Helicopter parents, right? Like watching over.
Yeah. And somehow that there's a perception that you're a bad parent because your kid's crying in Target or because, they freaking bit another kid at school, like whatever. And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I'm not in control of them, like I'm doing my best that I can here, but I think people get so wrapped up in like the expectations of their family. And quite frankly, that's why I got married and divorced and freaking blew up my love life in my 20s, because I had a blueprint that like I needed to get married. Marriage sucks, but you got to do it. And you're just going to be miserable. Like all of these things that were running me. Yeah. And I'm like, well, God, no wonder I had a horrible marriage that ended in divorce, because I came from an environment where that was basically what I learned was how life went. So I think a lot of people have expectations that they don't even know are running them. And the sooner you can take responsibility for everything, including the samples, right? I think whether it's business or life or anything, failures, I love reframing failures. So
I was about to mention that, you guys are like, obviously I love this because, obviously as a parent, Luca is 16 months old and same thing, right? He's crying, go right. No, you he fell down, he's gonna get up anyways. His knees are all scratched up. That's fine. He's gonna learn to lift his feet, right? He's gonna be okay. And I relate it, if we draw a line next to like private life to business life, right? If we own our own business, that's the extension of our private life in so many ways, right? And just like, we deal with relationships, right? Like our staff, we have relationship with our staff, with our team, right? Our partners, we have relationship with our partners. So why does that have to be separate? And instead of like putting them together and applying the same principles with those, once we started to do that, at least on our end, and we're still in the learning mode and, improving every single day, but how am I responsible, right? Well, maybe maybe we didn't have success in this because there was no plan, right? I didn't explain the plan well enough. We had a sample this morning with one of our team members, right, on the design team. And so we got some content back and we're like, well, personally, like, we don't feel like this is something that we can send out to our guests, right? Like, because we don't feel proud enough that this goes out. So we had a conversation and we took responsibility. We're like, this is on us because we gave you some guidelines, you went with them. Well, now this is how we are adapting and everything is okay. And some people might have really challenging times having a conversation like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love the whole responsibility and expectations, responsibility first. If you are not claiming responsibility, you're just in the to study. The way I feel depends on you, right? Whether you do this or that, which is huge, because if we want to, live our own life and control our own thoughts and power, we need to take responsibility on everything. And then I love the expectations part, because I know this might be debatable for a lot of people probably. And I do, because I hear all the time, it's like there needs to be some expectations and stuff like that. I think for certain things, maybe yes, right? But this is my personal take on expectations. Expectations, if they are met, they take away like the excitement of accomplishing that one thing, right? Of accomplishing, because it's like, oh, it's what it was expected, right? So good that you did it. If you fail, right? Like if you didn't meet that expectation, it's going to be massive, massive disappointment. And it's probably going to fall back into the responsibility bucket, right? I was like, oh, okay. Just either blaming somebody else, or then you can fall into a negative loophole of like, oh, I'm doing this. I didn't meet all these expectations, right? So that is my personal view on certain
Just so you know,
expectations.
I do not agree with what he says.
Yeah,
we actually had we had a similar thing, and so I'm much more like Fonzie. I was like, hey, you know, like and so what we came to though is there's a
yeah, right.
Team no expectations.
Hashtag expectations.
But we got the crowd. Hey, we got the crowd.
Yeah. I'd love to see. I'm not seeing the comments in StreamYard here, so I'd love to see the hashtag expectation no expectation.
Yeah.
You know what we came to on that. Just one note to pause there is sort of a different frame on like, okay, there are things that we're committed to, right? We're committed to each other and we need to follow through on our commitments. And then there are things that are these sort of what I sort of traditionally view as like, you know, expectations or unwritten rules, ways of being that Kate expects for, you know, me to do something. And I'm like, I don't even know that. It wasn't, I never committed to it. You didn't communicate it.
And that's the thing that I have learned when it comes to expectations. Cause I don't necessarily think that they're a bad thing. Yeah. Just being aware that, like, you know, Fonzie, you said they may happen, they may not, and know how you're going to react and, you're going to respond to that, whether it happens or not. What I have learned, and I've been now better about, particularly with Tanner and his viewpoint of expectations, is there's something that's called unspoken expectations. And that's where I think I fell into, or not I think, I know I fell into for many years, was this unspoken expectation. And I think a lot of people do fall into that category. And that's where it starts to get more sketchy. And that's where you can start to have, you know, the friction and the arguments and things like that. Because if I'm expecting Tanner to do something or to say something, and I have never said anything to him ever before, other than it's just how I thought it should always be, that's not fair to him. Absolutely. To just be able to assume that. And therefore it's on me taking responsibility, right? To be like, oh, okay, so now I understand why he didn't do this or say that or whatever. And therefore I should be better about communicating things. The one thing that I would say is that once I've now said it a few times, maybe I could expect him to remember to do that or not do that, and maybe we could work on that. But you know,
there's a meme that I saw recently that I showed her that was like, if a man says he'll do something around the house, he means he'll do it. His wife doesn't need to remind him every 6 months. And
that's awesome, yeah.
Yes.
Like,
I'm like, it's kind of
true.
I feel like that meme can apply for her mom too when she was said to do certain things. And Kate, you know, I'm loving what you said about the unspoken expectation.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not gonna talk in general, but personally, a lot of the times when I've dealt with expectations, they have been unspoken expectations, right?
Yeah.
And actually, so I took the liberty right now of going into Google and say, define expectation, right? And it is a belief that someone will or should achieve something, right? It doesn't really say there to communicate it to someone, right? Like even the definition here, it kind of talks about that unspoken expectation. And then you guys were also talking about commitment. So I think the bridge in between those, it's actually communication. Just like letting the other person know, like, hey, we are going to do this X, Y, and Z, or, you know. So again, it comes back to communication is king.
Going back to what happened yesterday, right? In my head, we had that unspoken communication where like I expected Fonzie to take action on this thing, but I never communicated, right? So it was like, okay, you know, why am I being this stupid and not even like telling him that this is exactly how I feel, right? So that's what like brought me down. I'm like, okay, let's have this conversation. And he's like, bro, like that takes me 2 seconds. Of course I'll do that for you, right? And then, you know, it took 3 hours, but that's a different thing. But he did it, right? And it was awesome. And then, you know, he came back and we chatted and it was good. And then I was recharged for today. So that's amazing. I love how this conversation went. I know that we got to wrap up very soon. I want to ask you 2 last questions, guys.
Wait, before the 2 questions, I just want to kind of like connect this expectations and commitments to the content, right? On the side of content, which at the end of the day is the same for your clients, right? Like you need to communicate to them what you're expecting from them and letting them know, because like you can have certain expectations, and either way, the other way around, them, they should communicate to you, right, what they're expecting from you. And if you can fulfill yes or no, you can tell them that, hey, I'm sorry, right? Like maybe this is not the right way. You should maybe go to this other person that they can do this better and they can help you out better. Absolutely. And sometimes we just come into places, right, into other businesses with expectations. And again, since we didn't communicate it, it doesn't meet the requirements that we're expecting. And it's like disappointment. So again, just encourage communication all along the way between businesses as well, not only on your personal life, but if you're going to do some work with somebody, just communicate.
Yeah, and we teach more about how to get that communication started, because I think that's also a very big sticking point for people. Well, what do I say? How do I say it? I bring it up, and then it's an argument, and and it's just, and it doesn't. Then it's not effective. Yes. So, so that's something that we coach on, and how to take those steps. And I think for your audience, the first and foremost is to take a step back from the situation and gather your own thoughts, write them on paper, like however, just don't be reactionary and be emotional in the situation. Just say, okay, I'm going to take a step back. What is it that I'm looking to accomplish here? What do I want? What would be my end goal here? Like, what do I want out of all of this? And then that way you can come in calmly to talk to whoever that person is and say, hey, like, I need to talk to you. Like, here's just something. And just start there. So it's not so reactionary and you're responding in a calmer manner.
I have a new tagline I've been using: put the poison on paper. And for so many people, again, there's so many, and I mean, Luis just talked about it, and I do it too. I'm going to draw it out, and yeah, we can go about 10 minutes longer. Well, I'll go a few minutes past 4:30, just to let you know. But so many times we work up in our head a conversation, and I'm going to say this, and then they're going to say this, and then what if this? And I'm still guilty of this, and 9 times out of 10, I can say the situation when it unfolds is never as bad as I make it up in my head.
Yeah.
Like it's never as bad. And so, one, you got to have the conversation with people just like you guys did yesterday. But 2 is that if you don't know how to get started, we had a great interview with this woman, Jody Chafee, and she said most people's communication in their relationship is either silence or violence. Either people don't talk about things, or they're so bottled up and angry that it's just a yell and a disagreement about everything. And so our sort of middle ground to that silence or violence scenario is to put the poison on paper. And like, there is such power in just putting pen to paper. And if you're super pissed at somebody, grab that pen and just, write it. But
there you go.
But get it down, right? You got to get it out of your body, because there's no way you can go to somebody and have a level-headed conversation when you're coming, loaded with cortisol and testosterone, and just like, I'm pissed off and I want to talk to you. And it's like, no. Defuse that bomb first. And make those points that you want to talk about to have that conversation.
Well, just saying, guys, like you read our minds. The next question was like, why don't you share with us a little bit of an action point for people to execute? So you just did it. The first, with Kate, step back and gather your own thoughts, and then put the poison on paper. Oh man, I love this line.
We even had like a harmonic there. Put the poison on paper.
All right, we can sing now.
It's a good line, man. Just like your content minions. Put the poison.
It is a great line, man. It is.
Love it. All right, guys. So this is probably my favorite question on the whole show, because I know that you've worked with content for a while, and we've known each other for a few months, and I love everything that you guys are doing. So the question is like, where would you be if you did not publish?
Good question.
We would just be husband and wife running like our own household.
Well, you mean where would we be like in our like how would our business be different? Basically, I think is what you're getting at, right?
I mean,
it can be either business, like
anything. Yeah,
I don't think anyone would know. No one would know us.
Well, yeah, we'd be in obscurity. But I think something and how you guys have helped with keeping us on track and
so
pushing us along. We recognize we're not the easiest client, but fortunately, there's good communication there.
You guys are amazing, by the way. Like, just saying.
We love you.
That it helps us refine our message, and it helps us get feedback from people. So one, it helps us help people, right? I mean, there are things that we say that to us are just sort of inconsequential, like that. Of course, that's common knowledge, or hey, we should go share this because it was valuable. But we assign sort of no value to it because like we don't know if it doesn't go to anybody, if it never connects with anybody, like there's not as much value there. And for us being able to share the things that we've learned, we say frequently, like by doing what we're doing with relationships and helping couples, for us, there's a healing aspect. It means that all of the turmoil that we went through over the past 10 to 15 years of our lives before we met is not in vain. It's not for nothing. It's not because God hates us or some crazy thing. Like it's literally a setup for the next chapter of our lives. And without being able to communicate and publish, nobody hears the message. We don't get feedback on the message. And we're just, I think where Kate was going, like we're just another couple in our household talking about all the great ideas that we have and all the things that we hope that we're going to do with no path to executing on that.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, yeah. We need like a sound of like drop the mic sound.
Well, that's a gong moment for sure.
Oh, there was a gong moment for sure. Wow.
Yeah, guys, like that's like incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. The main reason we asked that question is because like we use it ourselves as fuel too, because the publishing, getting your thoughts into words, like Fonzie said, like it's a therapeutic. It has that aspect to it. It helps us not just grow ourselves, but grow with our audience, grow the business, and it's just like a win-win-win. I don't think we've seen a downside to not execute. Yeah, definitely we have not seen a downside to creating content, to putting yourself out there and publishing. Like from every angle that we've tried to see it is like, man, that is super positive. Like let's just keep doing it. That's awesome, guys. Hey, thank you so much for coming in. How can people find you if they want to communicate with you? Since if they want to like reach out, learn more about you guys, be one of your students, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, so right now, today we just launched our podcast, The One Relationship.
Yay!
So we've got a website up for that. It's got all the episodes on there. It has the links to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and there's a little icon even to send us an email. We'll be launching a program for couples coming in October, at the end of October, that will be basically like a continuous program where people can come in, a sacred community. But between now and then, we're really just getting our message out with the podcast there at theonerelationship.com. We've already taken some great questions and great feedback for people in email. We read all of our emails. It's anonymous, and we're helping people in email, and that to us has been super beneficial already. So if you want, send us an email. It's info@kateandtanner.com, but all of it can be found right there at theonerelationship.com.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. We're going to leave all the links right below in the description. All you got to do is scroll down just a tiny bit and tap on it. Yeah. I mean, we encourage everybody to go check them out. Go listen to the podcast, and you heard the answer to all the emails. So send them an email. Communicate with them. Awesome, guys. Don't leave just yet, because you gotta experience the Hispanic goodbye. But with that being said, thank you so much for tuning into the content.
Thank you, guys.
Go ahead and subscribe. Smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to follow us on social media at BeastBrosCo. That is right. And if you find this episode impactful and you learn to communicate in a better way, don't forget to share it and leave a 5-star review. Thank you, guys.